morning, everybody. So I understand that some of you have been making chimes videos, but because we're in the pandemic and we can't have a lot of people together at the same time, we're making videos like separately, but then they get pushed together, they get squished together, and pretty music comes out. So I'm so glad y'all are having that opportunity to do that with Claire. And so I did a little bit of that this week with my friend Casey. You all need to meet Casey. I'm going to see if I can find a way for you to meet Casey, because Casey works so hard for our church. And one of the things she does is she puts together these great videos. So the hymn, the song, well, we did it two ways. We did it with just the flute and guitar at the beginning, and then we did it with words and pictures at a different place in the service. So here's what it sounds like on flute. Kind of pretty by itself. But I thought, you know what? It might be fun if we add guitar. So I got out my guitar, but I can't play guitar and play flute at the same time. If I had four hands and two mouths, maybe I could do it, but I don't have four hands and I don't have two mouths. Though the one I have is pretty big, but I don't have two mouths, and so I can't do it. So then I made another recording, and what I did, I don't have my computer up, but I had my computer up, and I had a recording of what I just did, and I had my earbuds in. Y'all might know what that's like. I had my earbuds in, so I was listening to the flute, and then I played the guitar and made a recording. So in my mind, I'm hearing do 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 So that's what I was hearing in my head. I wasn't singing it at that time. So I made that recording. I made the flute recording, and then I made the guitar recording, and then I made the voice recording. And you heard that. Oh God, we bear the imprint of your face. Now, because I have one voice, one mouth, my voice can make the sound through my mouth, right? So I can sing and I can play guitar at the same time. Singing and playing the flute at the same time is really hard because you need your mouth to play the flute, and it does a different thing when you sing. So I could, oh God, we bear the imprint of your face. So I could play and sing at the same time. But for this one, I didn't do that. Excuse me. I made a third recording. So I made flute, and I made guitar, and I made voice. And then I got another idea. I thought, why don't I write another flute part and make that recording? So that's what I did. I made a fourth recording, and that part goes like this. Actually, I played a wrong note there. Anyway, so that was 4 different recordings I did. And then I sent them all to Casey, who y'all will have to meet someday. I sent them all to Casey, and she made 1 recording out of them. And then she did this other amazing thing. She put pictures to go with the words. And so you see the pictures. And if you watched Big Church, then you saw it. But just in case you didn't watch Big Church yet, I want you to watch it now. Casey, who also is putting together this video for you, Casey also is going to put the finished product with all 4 of those tracks and the pictures. It's so great. Oh, y'all have to meet Casey. All right, bye-bye now.
O God, we bear the imprint of your face. The colors of our skin are your design. And what we have of beauty in our race, as man or woman, you alone define. Who stretched a living fabric on our frame, and gave to each a language and a name. Where we are torn and pulled apart by hate, because our race, our skin is not the same, while we are judged unequal by the state, and victims made because we own our name. Humanity reduced to little worth, dishonored is your living face on earth. O God, we share the image of the one, who flesh and blood are ours, not ever skin. In Christ's humanity we find our own, and in your family our proper kin. Jesus our brother we still crucify. Love is the language we must learn or die.
Hi friends, welcome to another children's church lesson. Today we're going to continue our story of Moses. So if you have not caught up about the story of Moses or who Moses is, I would love to invite you to go back a couple of lessons and learn about Moses' start. But today we're going to talk about how Moses confronted Pharaoh. Pharaoh is like the king of Egypt. But so we're going to talk a little bit about how Moses spoke out against the injustices that Pharaoh was putting towards or on God's people, the Israelites or the Hebrews. And so injustice or working towards eliminating injustices, as many of you probably know through our church sermons and messages and things, you know that working towards getting rid of injustices is really, really hard work. But we're going to talk about how Moses, this character in the Bible, worked really hard to bring justice to the things that were being done to God's people. So before we do that, though, I want us to start out by lighting a candle. And as I'm lighting this candle, I want you to think about somebody who you know who needs prayer. So it could be a close friend of yours, it could be a loved one, it could be anybody. But I want you to think about that for just a moment. Next, if you don't already have your Spotlight magazine, as always, I want you to get that out. You can pause the video for just a second. But I want you to go and turn to page number 8. It looks like this. It's got a lot of space right here. But I want you to read the directions, and I want you to pray with color. So all that means is I want you to follow the directions. They even have a little example right here. What? Wrong page. They have an example right here what your drawing should look like. But I want you to think of someone, a person's name. That person who maybe you were just thinking about a moment ago as we were lighting the candle, as we were starting our connection with one another. But I want you to take that person's name and write their name down, and then color, follow the directions, the instructions that are in the Spotlight magazine. And so go ahead and do that. If you need to pause the video to do that part of this lesson, feel free to do that and take as long as you need and come right back. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on to our story for this week. It is called Let My People Go. And the pages, if you're looking for them in your packet, are pages 60 and 61. They look like this, the illustrated version. But before we do that, a moment ago I mentioned the word injustice. And so if you don't know what the word injustice means, it means when something is not fair, or could be when some people are treated differently than other people. And so today's lesson talks about how God's people were treated differently and not in a good way. They were treated poorly by the king of Egypt, or the Pharaoh in this story. And so I want you to think for just a moment, if you can think of any injustices that you know about off the top of your head, somebody who wasn't treated fairly or is not being treated fairly currently, or when somebody is being treated, or somebody that you know who has been treated differently than other people. So take a second to think about those people. I want you to remember that person's name, or that group of people during this lesson today as we read this story about Moses and Aaron confronting Pharaoh. All right. Moses and Aaron told the Israelite leaders about God's plan to free their people from slavery in Egypt. Then they went to the palace and told Pharaoh that he should let the people go. But Pharaoh said no, and made the lives of the Israelites even more difficult. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "When Pharaoh says to you, 'Do one of your amazing acts,' and then say to Aaron, 'Take your shepherd's rod and throw it down in front of Pharaoh, and it will turn into a cobra.'" So Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh and did just as the Lord commanded. Aaron threw down his shepherd's rod in front of Pharaoh and his officials, and it turned into a cobra. If you don't know what a cobra is, it's a type of snake. And then Pharaoh called together his wise men and wizards, and Egypt's religious experts did the same thing by using their secret knowledge. Each one threw down his rod, and they turned into cobras. But then Aaron's rod swallowed up each of their rods. However, Pharaoh remained stubborn. He wouldn't listen to them, just as the Lord had said Pharaoh would not listen to them. So God sent Moses with a message. Because Pharaoh would not let the Israelite people go, God would cause Egypt's waters to turn into blood. Ooh. Aaron raised his shepherd's rod and hit the waters of the Nile River, and it turned to blood. The fish died, and the Nile began to stink. Ugh. So the Egyptians could not drink its water any longer. But Pharaoh remained stubborn and would not let the people go. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Go to Pharaoh and tell him this. This is what the Lord says. Let my people go so that they can worship me. If you refuse to let them go, then I'll send a plague of frogs over your entire country. The Nile will overflow with frogs. They'll get into your palace, into your bedroom, and onto your bed, into your officials' homes, and among all your people, and even into your ovens and bread pans. The frogs will crawl up on you, your people, and all your officials." Whew, that's a lot of frogs. But Pharaoh remained stubborn and would not let the people go. So God sent the frogs, and then lice, and then insects, then a deadly disease that killed all the livestock, and then skin sores and blisters, then hail from the sky, and then locusts, and then darkness over the entire land. Each time Moses and Aaron asked Pharaoh to let God's people go, but each time Pharaoh said no. Then God gave one final warning to Pharaoh. If he would not let the people of Israel go, the oldest child of every family and animal in Egypt would die. But Pharaoh still said no. God gave the people of Israel instructions so they would be safe. First, they were to prepare a meal of lamb. They should roast the meat over the fire and eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. And then they were to take some of the lamb's blood and place it on the 2 doorposts and on the beam over the door of the house. So all around the door. The blood would be a sign for God to pass over that house. And then God said, "This day will be a day of remembering for you. You will observe it as a festival to the Lord. You will observe it in every generation as a regulation for all time. When you enter the land that the Lord has promised to give you, be sure that you observe this ritual. And when your children ask you, 'What does this ritual mean to you?' you will say, 'It is the Passover sacrifice to the Lord. For the Lord passed over the houses of the Israelites in Egypt. And when he struck down the Egyptians, he spared our homes.' The people then bowed down and worshipped. At midnight, all the firstborn in the land of Egypt died, including the oldest child of the Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh called Moses and Aaron that night and said, 'Get up, get away from my people, both you and the Israelites. Go, worship the Lord as you said. You can even take your flocks and your herds as you asked. Just go and bring a blessing on me as well.' The Egyptians urged the people to hurry and leave the land because they thought, 'We'll all be dead.' So the people picked up their bread dough before the yeast made it rise, with their bread pans wrapped in their robes on their shoulders. The Israelites did as Moses had told them and asked the Egyptians for their silver and gold jewelry as well as their clothing. The Lord made sure that the Egyptians were kind to the people so that they let them have whatever they asked for. And so they robbed the Egyptians. Hundreds of thousands of Israelites left that night. They took many flocks and herds with them." That's a very long story, huh? So, as we come to the end of that story, I want you to think about God's story. I want you to think about how God worked God's self into this story. So, as always, here are some reflection questions for you. I wonder what it was like for Moses and for Aaron to keep returning to Pharaoh after each plague. So the Bible doesn't say specifically how long it took between each plague, between each time that Aaron and Moses went and asked Pharaoh to let God's people go. But I can imagine it wasn't a very brief time. It was probably months, over months and months, that Aaron and Moses continued to visit Pharaoh. Can you imagine having to spend that much time trying to bring justice to injustice in the world? It takes a lot of time. Just like the injustices that our church is working through in our community, in our local community. It takes a lot of time to get rid of the injustices in the world. So also, next reflection is, I wonder how the Egyptian people responded when all of these strange and terrible things happened. They must have been terrified, right? What do you think they did? Do you think they knew why they were happening? Do you think Pharaoh mentioned it to the Egyptians that, oh, hey, this is going to happen, just an FYI? Probably not. All right, so here's one question I want to ask you from our book, our story today. Why do you think Pharaoh kept refusing to let the people go? Do you think it was out of fear? Do you think it was because he just couldn't stand the thought of losing? It's a possibility. Okay, so now I want us to connect today's story with your own experiences and your own story. So here are 2 reflection questions for that. Pharaoh's repeated no's did not discourage Moses and Aaron. I wonder how you keep from being discouraged when things are hard or unfair. It's really difficult, right? It's so easy to just give up sometimes when things get difficult or hard or unfair. But I wonder what keeps you from being discouraged and quitting. The number 2 reflection is, I want you to think about a time when something wasn't fair. It could have been something recent, it could have been something a really long time ago, but think about something that just didn't work out and wasn't fair for you. Think about that for just a moment. Okay. What a wonderful and difficult story. So next week we're going to talk about Moses some more and the people of God and their journey after they left from Egypt. So that's a really, really good story, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So if you have your Spotlight magazine nearby, great. If not, pause the video and you can go back or go find your magazine and come back and press play. So as always, at the beginning of the magazine, there are these pages. It tells you exactly what the story. So our story today was Moses confronts Pharaoh. So we've already looked at page 8. Page 8 was this one, the praying with color page. Next, I want you to look at page 21. So there are a couple of kids who wrote letters and things that happened to them or to friends of theirs. And they want to know your advice. And so there's some places there that you can respond and talk about what they can do in the situation that they're in. Next, we'll look at page 31. Now, parents are going to have to help you with this one, but you can make your own unleavened bread. So it's called matzo. So unleavened bread just means that the yeast has not had time to rise. And so it has all the ingredients that you need right here, all the things, the utensils you'll need, and all the ingredients you'll need. So make sure you ask your parents for help before you do this. Don't try to do it yourself. But I want to find out if you actually make it or not. And then finally, page 35, which you all know I love puzzles. This is a puzzle page. So you're unscrambling these words and putting them in these boxes here. So have fun with that. Okay. Well, we've come to the end of our time together. This has felt like a very long time together, right? Which is great. But what I want you to do is take the hand of somebody who's nearby to you. And if you're by yourself, as always, give yourself a big hug as we close in prayer, okay? God, we believe that you want things to be fair and just for everyone. Give us the words to speak up when we see things happening that aren't fair. Help us treat others with love and compassion. Amen. All right, friends, remember, if you haven't caught up, you always can go back on our church's website or YouTube page and catch up on all the lessons from all the way to the very beginning of Joseph's story to Moses now. And of course, join us next week as we continue the story of Moses. Our friends, remember as you go throughout this week that you are loved and there's nothing you can do about it. All right, bye friends. I look forward to seeing you soon.